I enjoy the telekinesis powers a lot. Jean Grey, Eleven, Raven from Teen Titans, all of them, but I never knew the truth behind that power until I decided to include it on one character in one of my recent books. Only then I realized that this power is far more difficult to write than whatever I anticipated. As I was thinking on how to do it, I realized that the core problem with it is the same as with powers like the super speed. At one hand, I wanted to make the character powerful, being able to do anything just with a single thought. Lift cars, destroy buildings, and make people's heads explode. But right here came the first problem. Why then even have a story? He can just kill all enemies in an instant, and that's it. Why wouldn't he? If he has the power and doesn't, it becomes a plot hole. Then I thought of decreasing his powers, limit him in some way. But that made me realize another thing about why this power is one of the hardest to write. Think about it. You've probably seen a lot of these characters across the multiverse of cinema. One telekinesis character can destroy a whole city with a single twitch, while other ones can barely lift a cup. And the ones that seem unstoppable at times occasionally forget how their powers work when it is plot convenient. When the story needs the characters to prevail easily, the power is on point and he is controlling everything. But when the story wants the characters to struggle, well, you get moments like these.
I can't. It's too big.
The character has a ridiculous reason on why he can't do what he normally is capable of at that time. So I asked myself the question, how do then other writers manage to have success with it? As I was researching the topic, I found out that there are primarily three types of telekinetic characters that we see in movies, TV shows and comics. So let's break them down. Finesse. This is probably the best word to describe the first type. They don't rely on brute force in order to win their battles, but rather they depend on more sneak tricks and tactics to use their powers in a way to manipulate the right thing on the right time. Think of them as the surgeons of superheroes, the delicacy of picking up a needle and using it as a weapon, or untangling a piece of string in a crucial moment, or disarming an enemy without a sound. Take for example Eleven from Stranger Things. Early on in the series, she wasn't throwing cars and doing big damage. She started slow with her powers, flipping switches, moving objects and using them as weapons. It's all about precision and to know the strengths and weaknesses of your powers and when to utilize both of them. But as she grows, so do her powers. Her damage capabilities increase, yet it's always grounded in a sense of restraint. That's the thing about precision-based telekinetics. Their powers feel more grounded. It's not about raw strength, it's about control and using the power in a very focused way. But like any power, there's a limit to what they can do, and sometimes that limitation can make them feel underwhelming. Subtlety can feel like a limitation, especially when characters like Magneto or Superman are able to destroy the planet if they really wanted to. In those moments, Raven's reserved powers can feel like they lack the epic factor that some audiences crave. Next up, we have the situational telekinetic, the type of telekinetic character who's clearly powerful, but only when it's convenient for the story. These characters can move mountains when the plot demands it, but when things get tough, suddenly they forget they even have telekinesis. They don't use their powers to its full potential unless the situation calls for it. Why? Because if they did, the story would be over in 5 minutes. Take Luke Skywalker in The Empire Strikes Back, for example. Luke is a seasoned Jedi, but when he is in that pivotal fight with Darth Vader, where are his telekinetic abilities? He's not throwing Vader across the room or using the Force to stop his saber strikes. Instead, he's fighting hand to hand. Why? Because in this instance, the writers needed Luke to struggle, to face a challenge where brute force wasn't enough. It's a classic case of needing a power but only using it when it keeps the plot interesting. And this is where we run into a problem with situational telekinetics. If a character can destroy armies with a flick of their wrist, why aren't they doing it in every battle? Why are they fighting on the ground, getting hurt, when they could just end it with their mind? This inconsistency can take you out of the story. It's a tough balance to strike. On one hand, you need the character to feel vulnerable in certain situations so the stakes stay high. But on the other hand, this kind of writing can feel like plot convenience, where the writer chooses when the power works and when it doesn't, depending on what serves the narrative best. It feels less like a natural limitation and more like a cheat. And then there is the third type of telekinetic, the overpowered one. This is the telekinetic who's just so ridiculously powerful that they don't even have to break a sweat to take down an entire army. Jean Grey becomes this version of herself when she becomes the Phoenix in X-Men The Last Stand. As the Phoenix, she isn't just moving chairs or throwing small objects. She's tearing apart entire worlds. She's so powerful that no one stands a chance against her. And while that's cool to watch, it completely eliminates the tension of the story. There is no conflict. If your character can do everything, what's the point of a villain? We see this with the Scarlet Witch in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as well. Wanda has the ability to not only crush her enemies, but also manipulate reality itself, bending the very fabric of the universe to her will. She can create new realities, shapeshift, and alter the laws of physics as if they are nothing. But here's the problem. When a character has this kind of power, the stakes in the story become incredibly hard to maintain. How do you make them vulnerable? How do you make them feel like they have something to lose? When telekinesis gets to this level of power, there's a danger of it feeling like a free pass. The character can easily solve every problem with a single thought, and that's not only boring, it can make everything around them feel insignificant. We are talking about the kind of power that's hard to take seriously, because it's so over the top, it can create a world where nothing feels at risk anymore. So how to find that sweet spot between a telekinetic character who's too weak to be interesting and one who's too strong to be believable? There are a few tricks that I find work great. You have to make the power strong enough so the character can seem like he can go against all enemies in the story, but in the same time you have to limit that power just enough so he's at all capable of losing a fight. The character's weakness to the ability needs to be shown beforehand, so a potential death or just a loss in a fight feels earned rather than a plot convenient moment. Or the other thing is you have to make the enemy show an ability that is suitable for countering the telekinesis in some way. Only then, when the fight and that power is used, the win over the telekinesis feels in place. One way to balance this is through a gradual power ramp. The character doesn't start off as an all-powerful. They begin with smaller, more manageable abilities. They grow and evolve, learning to control their powers. Take for example Peter Parker. In Spider-Man 2, he starts off struggling with his powers, unable to even throw a punch without getting in his own way. But over time he learns to control his strength and his journey feels earned. His growth is something the audience can relate to, and it makes the eventual mastery of his powers feel satisfying. Another way is to show the mental strain that telekinesis can have on the character. Maybe using their powers comes at a cost. Every time they manipulate something massive, they get drained or exhausted. Think of Eleven from Stranger Things. Whenever she uses her abilities to their fullest potential, flipping vans, breaking bones, or even taking down the Mind Flayer, she bleeds from her nose, gasps for breath, and sometimes even collapses from exhaustion. The strain isn't just physical though. Using too much power can leave her mentally drained, making it harder for her to focus or even stay conscious. And then there's the idea of limiting their powers in a certain ways. Maybe they can only move objects within a certain range, or they have to be able to see what they're moving. That keeps them from being all powerful at once. Another crucial way to balance telekinesis may be to introduce vulnerabilities that come with using it. One of the most effective ways to do this is by making the power require intense concentration, forcing the user to remain completely still, maybe even with their eyes closed, to properly channel their abilities. This creates a dangerous blind spot, making them easy targets for an enemy looking for the right moment to strike. Take Suki Steakhouse from True Blood. While she is a telepath rather than a telekinetic, her powers require her to focus deeply, which means that in moments of chaos or stress she becomes vulnerable. Now apply that same principle to a telekinetic character. Imagine they need to stand perfectly still, eyes shut, focusing every ounce of their energy just to lift something as simple as a knife. In that moment, they are completely defenseless. This limitation forces the characters to strategize. Do they risk using their ability in the middle of a fight, knowing they will be exposed? Or do they have to rely on allies to protect them while they concentrate? Maybe they develop ways to work around this weakness, like setting traps in advance or only using their ability when their enemy expects it the least. By adding this kind of restraint, their power suddenly feels earned rather than overpowered, creating genuine tension in every fight. When it comes to telekinesis, the most important thing to remember is balance. The power needs strength, but it also needs vulnerabilities to make the character feel human and real. Without that balance, telekinesis can quickly become either boring or overpowered, and the story can lose its edge.